The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales. Hello and welcome back to the Businessin Wales Podcast with me, Daniel Bevan. Now, what is better than speaking to one elite athlete and former sporting CEO? Speaking to two, of course. That's why I'm so delighted. We are joined by Ria Burrage-Male and Vicki Sutton. Thank you both so much for coming along. How are we doing?
Good, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us.
Good. I love that you call me an elite athlete because that's absolutely untrue, but I take it every time. I was not an elite athlete. I did coach at a high level, but Ria is the only one that's played for Wales, but absolutely female founder too. But I'll get in trouble if I claim I'm an elite athlete, and I've got no way to back it up.
Fair enough. Well, we can blame all the press releases for the Captains Clubhouse about that. Then.
We're putting
it's
one
too
box
late.
now, aren't we?
It's too late. Couldn't edit
it's
it.
It's good.
Joined at the hip.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Pretty much.
Wonderful. Well, anyway, let's start with the Captains Clubhouse, shall we? Because that is your joint endeavour. Tell us about the initial idea and how that came about.
You tell it better. Go on.
Tell it.
You tell it.
As noted, Vic and I were NGB chief execs. I'd finished about a year or so prior to Vic leaving. And I think we've been friends for such a long time. We've coached together. I think this was always on the cards at some point. I think deep down we knew we would eventually arrive at a point where we were working together. But, I mean, you had the idea, a bit of the concept to start, came to me and said, what's your thoughts on this? Yeah. And then we were actually wedding dress shopping for our friend whose wedding's tomorrow or day after tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And we were in an Irish bar watching rugby with an Irish band in the background. So we should have been just dancing, having a laugh. And we were kind of coming up with this concept. So we were a few beers in and kind of on the back of a beer mat said, right, what are we going to do? And we kind of arrived at it really in the perfect sporting setting, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, all the best ideas come at 2 a.m. in an Irish bar, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So tell us exactly what Captains Clubhouse is. What are you aspiring to do?
Yeah, so there's 8 million captains in the world, roughly. That's an estimated guess. And a lot of them will be grassroots captains, but a good proportion will also be professional, athletes and will be being paid to play their sport. But the majority won't be. It'll be a hobby. And often when people get made captain, we say it's for one of 3 reasons. They're the best player in the team, they're the loudest player in the team, or actually, more often than not, no one else will do it. And when they then take on that role as captain, they probably have to do an additional between 1 to 10 hours a week, depending on the sort of the level their team is playing at, of extra work, organising the team, chatting to coaches, maybe having some press duties if they're a professional athlete. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work that often goes unnoticed and unrewarded as well. So Captains Clubhouse exists to support those 8 million captains, or as many of them that we can reach, to just learn. So we've got a library, we've got video interviews, we've got a community section, connect in the community, connect to other captains from across the world, and then just ultimately lead their team in a better way. A great captain can be the difference between you having a great season or a not so great season because of the way that they lead the team. So yeah, Captains Clubhouse is...
And for us, it's definitely an untapped space. If you think about kind of the evolution of business and, focusing on leadership development, focusing on personal development, investing in people, we just recognise this is an untapped space where we fundamentally believe the value should be placed upon these individuals. This is about, making them better at their roles within the sporting context, but, fundamentally long term, they're going to become better employers, and better members of staff, better leaders, better people at home, better people in society. So we're, by us providing them with these additional resources and tools now, we think is going to, there's collateral to that as well.
And speaking about untapped potential in this market, I mean, it's a world first, which surprised me because, as you say, 8 million captains around the world. So many people are sports fans and can recognise the job a captain does, perhaps on the pitch, but maybe not so much off of it. Yeah. But I guess from your perspective, there is much growth to be made in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. When we started listing, right, what can we help people with? What topics do they need to know about? There's so much. We have so many articles lined up waiting to go on the Clubhouse at the right time, just because captaincy there's so many nuances to it. It's impossible to sort of, capture it in a line or two, or, one or two blogs. It's multifaceted. So yes, look, there are other captaincy support programs out there, but not to the extent that Captains Clubhouse exists. It will be maybe an individual club, putting their captain on a course or something, or maybe a governing body, providing additional resources or something, but not to the extent that we're doing it, for sure. And everyone we've spoken to, and I don't exaggerate, absolutely everyone we've spoken to said, I cannot believe something like this doesn't already exist, which is great for us to be sort of on the cusp of something like this. But as founders, it's also a bit unnerving, because there may be people with more resources than us that will try and do a better job of it. But we are so uniquely placed with our employment history and the different ways we've worked with captains or being captains ourselves in the past, that we think that's the reason it doesn't exist, just because the right blend of people haven't come along to do it yet. And we believe that's us.
Amazing. And it's obviously been backed by the Dev Bank as well, which is extremely important. How important has that been to get you off the ground?
Yeah, I think, we're really ambitious to grow, and to have that kind of startup loan just allowed us, I suppose, to take our kind of intentions that step further. Some of the interviews, the quality of production now is so much better, and I think that's really important when we've got these high profile captains, and we've got captains with great stories sitting in a room with us. We're putting value on them as well, so creating that environment is really important to us, and Dev Bank has allowed us to do that, so we're really grateful for their support.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. That's not just a number, it's generations of trust built on shared values, because family isn't just who you're born to, it's who you choose to stand with, and that's what matters to us. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands, and trust, that's at the heart of it all. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing a legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
So tell me then a little bit about the key qualities that perhaps fans may not see every day that a captain has to take on. I mean, there's a team bonding element, I'm sure, but the types of things that they'll have to take on that they may not realise before going into that job.
I think the first thing to do is notice that there's so much, we're so consumed, so we can take a bit of pressure off a captain around everything else that's going on in their lives. I think that's really important to note, that we want to make their jobs as easy as possible. But I suppose it depends on the level the captain is playing at. But it's anything from, communicating with teammates, communicating with captains, managing a WhatsApp group, having challenging conversations, dealing with a parent on the sideline, up to, stakeholder management in terms of sponsors, partners, board members, chief execs. We've got a range of responsibilities that a captain will have to undertake, from grassroots, I suppose, to elite.
Yeah, and some of the captains we've spoken to have literally had to lobby local government for better facilities for their teams, and that's not something they ever imagined having to do when they became captain of the team that they're in. But it's a very real responsibility. So we really try and make sure the clubhouse is so varied that any captain can come on and read something, watch something on any given day and think, wow, that really helped me. I'm going to keep coming back regularly. And it's an app, it's in people's pockets, it's something they can look at when they've pulled up to training or a game, or if they're on the team bus on the way home. It's there for them, like not many other things can be at the moment. It's
little things like just, how do you have your first team talk? Like I'm 15 years of age, and I'm delivering my first team talk to my mates. That's uncomfortable, isn't it? Particularly when we're in a world of, we engage kind of through technology. Now I'm stood in front of 15 people going, right, okay, come on guys, let's go and do this. Or we're losing 1-0 at half time. Like, how do I have that conversation to say, it's okay, there's still X amount of minutes left in this game, we can do this. And another one was around, to Vicky's point, around lobbying. One of the captains we spoke to, they were fighting for equal pay. So they were training and then coming home of an evening and on team calls and Zoom calls and, researching kind of political, concepts and understanding of how they can challenge some of these things. So, this is the stuff you don't see. You just go, I'm a captain and I'm the loudest person, but there's so much more to it than that. And, the biggest thing for us at the moment is the decision makers, be that club committees, national governing bodies, you know, we want you to take responsibility for this space. Work with us, partner with us to make sure that those individuals, we talk about people here, those individuals are supported to do this role fully to the best of their ability. And we believe that actually happens and sits with the decision makers as opposed to the captains themselves, you know, stepping forward and, you know, seeking this out.
Yeah, and paying the money to be part of the clubhouse. You know, that shouldn't, they already give enough time and energy. It shouldn't really be them that's paying, you know, the very good value monthly fee, but it should be their club or their, you know, governing body or region, to Ria's point.
I mean, ultimately, it's a development opportunity as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Gordon, I'm very keen to ask, what was your first team talks like? You know?
My captaincy story is quite funny because, and we've written a blog about this. I didn't realise I was captain. So it was my primary school cricket team, right?
Sure.
Nobody told me I was captain until our end of year awards, when they gave me an award for being captain. And I said to my teacher, I didn't know that I was captain. He was like, oh, well, of course you were. You know, who else would it have been? Yeah. I'm the best player. Who else would it have been?
No, it's I led with loudest.
Yeah. Thanks, mate. But who else would it have been? And I'm like, well, I didn't know. So I think that's sort of deep-rooted in my head early on, that actually if you're going to make someone captain, tell them they're captain. But it started to sort of evolve, well, what else do they need to be able to know, have and do as well? So, yeah.
And I don't recall the moment, but I'm not very good at reflecting back. I'm a kind of what's next person. But I do recall, you know, captains that have been brilliant, where you literally will run through a wall for them and they just have this ability to communicate. And I've kind of been led by captains where you turn to them after the game to kind of say, you know, can I help me out that, you know, as a player, I didn't do X very well, and they've not been there, you know, so that communication piece, I think, is critical in the space of captaincy. And I've experienced kind of both positive and negative, you know, and that's why we've got some really good articles and blogs on communication and stuff in the toolkit.
And the emotional stuff as well. You know, we had an instance in a club I was with before that, you know, a player lost a really close family member during the season, and, you know, as the leaders in the team, what do you say to them? And it's really tough. You know, ultimately you're a person first, but actually as captain, what can you say that makes them feel okay? And because they won't want to let the team down. So we've got info on that type of emotive stuff as well.
Is the key qualities then, do you think, are based around emotional intelligence, that communication, being able to speak to different people in different ways?
Yeah, I think a lot of our captains so far have talked about, you know, authenticity.
Yeah.
A lot of them sort of said they were given the armband and all of a sudden felt a sense of, I need to be X, when deep-rooted their true values, their Y. And eventually, you know, for some it took a long time for them to realise actually the best version is me, and I need to just be a captain, you know, in my true authentic self. And that's come through quite a lot,
I think every person we spoke to said
they shouldered the
just be
responsibility
yourself.
and changed instantly. And then they weren't able to captain fully, and and actually they didn't enjoy it, did they? They were like, I don't want to be a captain. This is not for me, until they were able to do it from their true authentic way.
We're seeing an evolution into a lot of leadership teams now, so it's not necessarily one person as captain. There'll be co-captains, or there will be a captain, but they'll have a leadership team that's built from different positions, different approaches, different skills. So that's becoming really popular, and it's really exciting to see that captaincy isn't just down to one person. A lot of the time now, there's lots of leaders that develop in different ways.
Yeah. And the absolute strength in that is we are all different, and the people that we're captain, that we're working for and leading, are all different. So somebody might have a strength, you know, in terms of that emotional intelligence and putting an arm around somebody, and somebody might just be leading by pure example on the pitch.
Yeah.
So, you know, some of the captains we spoke to have said, I absolutely adopt that role and responsibility, but I'm not very good at kind of going, oh, how are you? You know, and and that's where the blend of like, you know, team captains. I think like in the World Cup with England, there was like 7 of them, weren't they, on the sideline
on the
before
pitch.
half time. they kind of gathered as a leadership group, and then they went into the changing room. So that was really interesting to see that, wasn't it, with the Women's World Cup this year.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years. And in that time, we've learned it's not just about cars, it's about the impact we leave behind. We believe in driving change, supporting the people around us where we live and work. Because when our communities thrive, we all do. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's biggest motor brands. But what drives us goes far beyond the road. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
You've actually preempted, Vicky, because I was going to ask about these pioneering schemes, if you will, to get these leadership groups. I believe the most high profile a few years ago was Brentford in the Premier League, when they had 4 or 5 players. But obviously it's something that's been used across not just elite level sports, but for a long time now. Of course, Wales women have got that model at the minute, the co-captains with Alex Callender and Kate Williams. So how do you see that planning out at the minute in terms of obviously disappointing World Cup, I know, but
I mean, it makes sense, particularly in rugby where there's 15 on the pitch. It makes sense to have 2. You look at, a sport like basketball with a smaller team, and you may find it's more common there to have 1 captain. There's a great study in there somewhere. But certainly the games that require more people on the pitch to have more, I suppose, leaders just makes perfect sense. Yeah, you are starting to see it a lot in football as well.
And I think the nature of if you take something like hockey, where you've got continuous rolling substitutes, for a long time in hockey, and even when I played back in day, we had leadership groups. So there was 3 captains, because that 2 captains might be off the field at one point, and actually, what we found as well was a certain captain might be better at captain a particular game, or one of the captains, actually, we just need you to fully focus on playing today, so we're going to take the captaincy pressure off you, and somebody else will captain. So there's a real kind of strategic approach to this. I think depends who you're playing against, depending what the competition is, depend what you want from the players, can determine maybe who's kind of wearing the armband that day.
And I suppose as well, and again, going back into the elite sport example, some players who may be the best in the dressing room may not necessarily be the best leaders or oversee the best results. I'm thinking particularly about Joe Root, because he's arguably England's greatest ever batter. Yeah. But performances didn't work on the pitch while he was batting. It's moved over to Ben Stokes now, and he's playing some of the best cricket of his life, So I guess just using that example, it's an opportunity in those leadership groups to take that pressure off people if that's what's needed. And
it's nice that you see that happening, particularly in cricket, as you've mentioned. It's a good example. A lot of sort of the England leadership, if they go and play franchise, they don't necessarily captain those franchises anymore. They used to, but there's definitely been a shift, which is so. Joss Butler didn't captain Manchester Originals much of the 100 season just gone. He's always a leader, but actually because he's got such a captaincy responsibility at England, it's almost nice to have a break from being captain every now and then and just play. And wicket keeper's hard enough anyway. There's so much going on, so just to do that, not that he could definitely have managed it, but it is nice to have that pressure off a little bit. We talked actually to Lauren Parfitt, who was the first female captain of the Glamorgan women's team, the first ever women's team.
And what a first season, by the way.
I know, right? Unreal. And she actually is really good at being able to sort of self-compartmentalise. So she says, when I'm batting, I think about batting. I don't think about captaining. I'm a batter. And that, I think that took us by surprise a bit, because we were like, when you're captain, aren't you always captain? But actually cricket is such a game of 2 halves where you literally are doing 2 completely different things, that being able to box things off like that it's a real skill, and she does it well. It was really interesting
that she just sort of said, like, I'm just performance focused right now. I'm not team focused at all. And we were taken aback by that, but I thought it was really good of her to kind of acknowledge that, particularly for our community to go, if we look to take the cricket community and some young players coming through, they might feel that responsibility. Now they know, actually I can do what Lauren does, and I think that's what's sort of nice about the offer that we give to people. But just on that note as well, with pressure, having that leadership group and alternate captains, there's also things that go on in people's personal lives.
Yeah.
That in a moment they go, actually, I just need to play today. I can't captain.
Yeah.
And to be able to have that conversation with the rest of the leadership group, with the coaches, etc., to say, I can't do it today, and know full well I can say that because the person sat next to me is there and ready to step up. And I think sometimes we forget that these are human beings at the end of the day, and that there's added pressure outside of the sport in their personal lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think it'll be able to set players up for post-sport, whether that ends up being going into commentary or indeed into business as you two did?
Captains Clubhouse.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. When
100%.
we first said it, we were like, there's so much here that actually could apply to any sector at all. And we've had people, saying, "Oh, I'm not a captain, but can I join?" And we say, "Of course you can, absolutely. If you want to grow yourself as a person, yes. Inexcusably, the content is aimed at captains, but anyone is welcome to, join the clubhouse and enjoy what we've done. But yeah, certainly, and especially the exciting thing for us is with young captains as well, who maybe don't know what career path they want to go down yet. The clubhouse almost enables them to be just better rounded as a person. So actually, whatever they do go into, on top of captaincy, they're competent and confident as leaders.
There's so much resource in there for them, that inevitably they're going to be able to take into the world of work. Undoubtedly. I mean, as Vicky's alluded to, anybody could access our resources and take it into whatever sector, whatever stage of their leadership or their career they're at. And actually, that's the most exciting part for us, as well as kind of creating this amazing space for the sport and the captains and them being better leaders on the field. I'm really excited to see kind of some of these captains evolve into into the world of work and go, I learned that when I was 15, 16, 17 years of age in this community, and it's improved me now as an adult. And that's, in 10, 15 years' time, how exciting would it be to kind of go back and go, yeah, thanks, that was because of you guys.
Oh, yeah. No, that would be absolutely amazing. And you have to keep track of where everyone goes.
Yeah.
It's a PhD year somewhere, isn't it? A longitudinal study.
Yeah. That's not really my bag.
Not mine either.
I'm keen.
You go
I
for
love
it.
it.
You're the clever one.
We're both USW alums, though, Ria.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, I did my masters in USW. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't do a masters.
I've done 2. Yeah, I'm glutton for punishment.
Oh God. Well, you got one for me then. Yeah, exactly.
I actually went to Oxford, Brooks. So there.
Proud of you.
No.
Amazing. So what would you say then is the key leadership quality if you could just pick one?
I think it's impossible to pick one.
I could. I don't know if I could ever hone in on one.
There's 3 I think that spring to mind.
Oh, there we
are. I think it is that authenticity piece. Inevitably, it's kind of effective and impactful communication, not just communication. And there's a little bit around knowing the people around you, knowing your team, knowing your coaches. So I think there's a bit of a, I don't know, what's that Venn kind of diagram going on here? There's 3 areas for me, I think. And actually, had you asked me this before we started interviewing and before we started researching and things, I probably would have gone, 100% communication. But yeah, there's 3 for me now, based on the work we've done.
Yeah. There's a phrase in sales, and I think it applies. It's be interested, not interesting. And I think as a captain, the more time you take being interested in others and putting others first, rather than yourself, the better a leader you are.
Being curious.
And how does that translate into the dressing room then? The idea of being interested, just making sure that, I guess, as you said, just other people first. You're not thinking about representing yourself as the captain, but representing the team. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. You see a lot when captains get player of the match, or even other players get player of the match, and they're interviewed post game. They'll say, "Oh, it wasn't me, that person played me the ball, or that person was able to set me up." And in a great captain, you'll see that head and shoulders. It's the team. It's not me. It was the team that did it. So,
and if you think about it from a leadership perspective in any sector, what you want to do is build the best team around you. You want to fill the gaps of your weaknesses with other people's strengths. And I think that translates into the changing room. If you know your team and you know what all of their strengths are, where their strengths lie, and if you know that actually they're having a bad day today because you understand them, that's where you can support each other and get the best out of each other. So, ultimately, captaincy is leadership, and it applies in any sector.
I'm keen to ask as well about specifically female sports, because it's been long talked about now, the underdevelopment and perhaps the lack of focus on sports that particularly women are playing at the moment, and we're seeing the results of that on the pitch. Do you think that the same things happened in developing female captains?
I think the rate of female captains develops as the rate of female sport develops. I think a better study would be female coaches.
Sure.
But that's obviously, it interests us, but it's not why we're here. But I think you look at some of we've been fortunate enough to speak to some exceptional women's football captains very recently, but those episodes aren't live yet. But the maturity that they brought to those interviews, you'd get that from a captain of the male equivalent team in the Premier League. So I think it's getting there, women's sport. It's nowhere near got the profile it should have, but the women's football Euros, the Women's Rugby World Cup at the minute, and all the other, all the great cricket stuff and all the other sort of high profile sports are getting so much more coverage now. It's better, but there's still a long way to go, and all the captains have said there's a long way to go, but it's better than it was.
I think what you'll find as well in the women's game is there's two ways of looking at it. Women can do things differently and better, and learn from kind of maybe the mistakes that men have made, but also they have to do so much more, and you can just see that from the fact that as captains, you take Megan Rapinoe, you take Steph Houghton, they've had to fight for equal pay, they've had to fight for visibility, they've had to fight for media rights. So outside of which we alluded to earlier on, outside of their on-field responsibilities, they have taken on so much more as captains. And actually, the positive side to that is now they can evolve as better people, and they can influence decision makers, and they can ensure that the path paved for those behind them is so much smoother, because they've had quite a difficult and challenging time. But as individuals, they've excelled in so many more ways. And I think sometimes we forget that. We forget to kind of look at the distance that we've travelled sometimes. So yeah, and I also think, as Vicki alluded to, we had a captain on who's 22.
Yeah, young.
And
really
the
young.
way she was communicating with us, I was never.
I had to check. I was like, how old is she?
Yeah, it was just
Unreal.
incredible. And again, it's because she's had to shoulder those additional responsibilities. I just think we forget that sometimes.
Sinclair Group has been part of the motor industry for over 80 years, and we've never stood still. Because for us, it's not just about where we've been, it's about where we're going. We believe in progress, embracing innovation, investing in technology, and moving towards a more sustainable future for everyone. We offer new and approved used vehicle sales and service for some of the world's most forward-thinking motor brands. But our drive is always to the future. So whether you're starting your journey or continuing your legacy, visit sinclairgroup.co.uk. Belong for good.
Actually, on that point of women's sports being underdeveloped and not being where it should be, I'm keen to get your thoughts. There was some news article this morning that the BBC put out about there being no statues of female sports people in Wales. 18 at the moment of men, but none of women. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
It's funny, isn't it? I think they've just put a statue of Sue Bird in Seattle, haven't they? So I think it's probably not just akin to Wales.
Sure.
I think there's probably a global issue here. What are my thoughts? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's wrong. What I will say is there's an amazing painting of Hayley Matthews, who's a West Indian cricketer who plays for Welsh Fire, on the side of Glamorgan. It's huge. So if I would rather a massive painting than a statue, because more people can see it. But it's exciting, that the times will change, and watch this space. I'm sure by the end of this year there'll be one in the making.
It's just another stage of evolution for women's sport. I mean, I don't even know why it's a debate. It's just, it should be part of, this is what we're doing.
Yeah. Do you subscribe to the idea if you can't see it, you can't
Absolutely.
be it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
See it, be it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I think with us, it works two ways. It's from a captaincy perspective. So actually, we have this amazing platform for captains to be able to come and see other famous captains, but get behind the scenes of actually what's it take to be a captain, which isn't publicised that much. It's post-match interviews are about the games. They're not about, well, tell us about a time you felt overwhelmed as a captain. They don't get asked those questions until they meet us. But also from our perspective as 2 female founders, that sadly that is still quite rare. There's a lot of amazing female founders doing wonderful things in Wales and further afield, but it is still quite rare to find female founders in sort of the leadership space. So we're big advocates for that, and we hope that if we can change perceptions on, you know, both of those strands, then great.
Yeah, we absolutely want to be role models to young women and girls, you know, who want to enter into a career of leadership. And you know, you can absolutely do it if you put your mind to it. We're lucky as well that we get on so well, don't we, Vic?
Most of the time.
Yeah, so we're lucky that we're mates as well, you know, because you do sometimes, there is that element of doubt sometimes, you know, and you know, we can use the phrase imposter syndrome if we want to, but when you're then with somebody that you can just trust and say, you know, and I suppose this applies to on the field as well. You know, sometimes I say to Vic, mate, I'm a 3 out of 10 today. I need you to lift me up. And that applies in the sporting context. If you can come into that environment and say to your captain, say to your colleague, your co-founder, your leader, I'm not myself today. I need support. Like, to be able to have that free conversation and to feel safe to do that is so underrated. And I think we're really lucky that we're on this leadership journey together. We're on this kind of, you know, founder growth together, and it's really exciting. We want to be role models for the next generation.
Yeah, and it's not always easy. We do get on very well, and that part is easy. But it's, you know, founding a business is hard. It's like 97% of new businesses don't survive the first year, and we're confident that won't be the case for Captains Clubhouse. But it's hard, you know.
It is hard.
But then if it was easy, everyone would do it. That's something we say quite often.
Yeah, absolutely. I do just want to ask one very quick question about the statue before we move on. But if you could pick one person,
Jess Fishlock.
Yeah, I think so. Jess Fishlock's probably the obvious choice at the minute, isn't she?
I hate being put under pressure there.
I can say Jess Fishlock. Yeah. I don't. But that would be one statue in
It can't just
Cardiff.
be Jess. Yeah.
I would want a statue in every postcode of a female.
Tanny Gray in Swansea. I'm not going to go through every single one.
I think
but
that's the point. Then you then there's so many incredible female athletes. You have to put Tanny in the mix. You know, you just. And then you talk about female athletes, then you talk about Laura McAllister and what she's doing in the kind of governance space. Like, what an incredible female. There's so many amazing Welsh female role models to just pin it down. And, you know, I would always say Jess, because Jess is a very good friend of mine as well. But we have to celebrate the success of our women in so many different ways. And the statue is wonderful, but I still don't think we do enough to acknowledge the incredible women within Wales and within Welsh sport.
Yeah, I suppose that there is a fear, isn't it, that it could just end up being a gesture that gets moved on.
I suppose I think that's my point.
Yeah.
It has to be a continuous thing. You know, we have to recognise these incredible women.
Yeah, absolutely. So, go on, a hard pivot now back to Captains Clubhouse. But who has been your most interesting conversation, whether it's been released or not, whether we can get a teaser?
That's really difficult to answer. And for me, there's not one that stands out. We both have people that if we got to interview them, they'd be like our dream. But for me, we go into each interview really open-minded. We've learnt to have sort of an element of flexibility in how it goes, so we can tease things out. But I've got something incredibly valuable from every single person that we've spoken to, whether they're, you know, globally known or actually somebody that is known quite well in their particular sport, but maybe not wider. But everyone we've spoken to has been brilliant, honestly, and really teased out some good stuff.
I think the important thing for me is that there is somebody in there for everybody. You know, we've talked to somebody who is, you know, a community club player where the sport has literally saved their life. And now they're in this captaincy position, they just feel this sense of kind of, you know, success and achievement. And that is just, I mean, to hear that story was great. And then we've spoken to captains who have literally, like we said, you know, fought for, you know, equal pay and better visibility. And to hear those stories, we've spoken to somebody who, you know, as we've kind of touched upon earlier on, that, you know, lost both their legs in an IED explosion and is now excelling in their sport in a space they never thought they would be. So the stories are so ranging, and they're not just high-profile athletes, they're just people with incredible stories that we think our community would love listening to and could take something from. And I think that's what matters to us, not necessarily there's a favourite person that we've interviewed. Yeah. Although I do love Sir Gareth Edwards. Yeah, to kind of sit with someone like Sir Gareth and to have the opportunity to watch him go back in time in his eyes was just so emotional for me. And it was a real honour just to spend time with him. You know, he's just, you know.
But he'd never really been asked questions about being a captain. And that baffles me that not just Sir Gareth, but like people that are captains here and now that have literally are captaining on the weekend. You know, on TV.
No one's ever cared about them as a captain, have they?
They don't get asked, you know, tell us a time you find it hard.
Tell us, how are you?
They just don't get asked. It baffles us, but great that we can do that and fill that space.
Amazing. Well, our time's nearly come to an end, I think, but I always end these podcasts with asking if you had any advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Don't be so naughty in school.
Just in school.
Okay, you go first.
My younger self. I think. I'm getting emotional now. I don't know why.
You're okay. You're safe.
So. Thanks. I think be brave. Like, so I joke that I've, like, when I was younger, I used to invite the kids on my street into my back garden, and I'd charge them 20p to come to Sutton Farm. And
once an entrepreneur, always
exactly. And that I think recognising that now, it's really special. So I just tried everything, did as many different jobs as I could just to get some skills. But I think be brave, and it's, you know, it's okay to not know necessarily exactly what your next step is. Right now, I don't necessarily know what my next step is. I know Captains Clubhouse is absolutely there, but be brave to sort of think, I don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
Mine, I'm not, I suppose kind of when I hit 40, I started to shrink my kind of group a little bit, my tribe. And I think I probably started to, and I don't like to say the word care less because I do care, but worry less about how people perceive me. And I think when we're young, we spend a lot of time thinking about where I fit, what people think about me, you know. And I think, you know, there's a really nice, good thing about, like, let them think what they want to think, let them love you, let them hate you, whatever it is. So I think, you know, be kind, be your true authentic self, be a good person, but don't worry if somebody doesn't like you. Care a bit less about them because they don't matter. They're not important to you.
And Vicki made the cut, of course.
Vic, yeah, she's in the tribe.
I'm on trial every day.
Don't you?
No, it's great. Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, both thank you so much for spending some time with us and talking all about Captains Clubhouse. We'll have to have both of you on again to talk about your individual entrepreneurship, because maybe we didn't speak enough about that, but we could speak for hours about it, I'm sure. Please do come back, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure. And sign up to Captains Clubhouse.
Captainsclubhouse.com.
The Businessin Wales Podcast, sponsored by Sinclair Group, the business media for Wales.